Okay, we are going to make fluffy garlic butter breadsticks. These are absolutely amazing. You guys are going to just totally love them. So let's get started. So what I always suggest is to proof our yeast, and if you just need a refresher on proofing the yeast, you can go back to that module in this bread module here. But we're basically warming up the water to about 110 degrees, and then we're adding in some sugar and our yeast, and the sugar will help feed the yeast to start getting it activated. I always like to make sure that that the yeast can be proofed first, because if you start to mix all your ingredients in there and you're waiting for your bread to rise and it doesn't rise, you'd be really upset and then you waste all those ingredients. So we want to go ahead and make sure that the yeast is actually proofed and ready to work for us. So we're going to go ahead and that's our first step that I like to do. It's just to get that proofed. So you're just kind of mixing it, stirring it, kind of dissolve those yeast granules in there. And we're going to go ahead and set that aside. Next up, in the meantime, while we're letting that proof for about 5 to 10 minutes, we're going to go ahead and measure out our flour, which we're going to need 3 cups of flour. And make sure to use the fluffy method that I talk about, whatever container your flour is in, or your bag or whatever. Just kind of fluff it up first, and then in the bag, and then put it into the bowl. This way it's not packed flour. You guys have heard me say that a couple times, but I'll keep repeating it, because this way we don't want too much flour, because that can really throw off the texture that we're looking for, which is very fluffy for these fluffy garlic butter breadsticks. So I just let that proof for a very small time. You can let it go much longer, but I can see the bubbles being activated, so I know it's going to work. So we're going to go ahead and pour that in there. And then in the meantime, I'm actually going to use that same pot and cut into, or get the 3 tablespoons of butter. You can see on the butter stick, they always are very helpful with how many, they always have it marked down there how many tablespoons. There's 8 tablespoons in each stick, which is a half a cup. But we just need 3 for this recipe. And we're going to melt that in that same pan and then add that melted butter into our flour and yeast mixture so far. Add in our salt as well. And then we're going to attach the dough hook. And we're going to turn it on low to get it starting to mix up. Alright, we're going to let that mix for a while. And you're going to see the texture change while it's mixing for about 5 minutes. It's definitely needing to do a lot of mixing for a while. This is your kneading part. So if you did not have a stand mixer, you can combine the ingredients together with your hand and a spoon, a bowl, or something like that, and then plop it onto your counter and then do the kneading as well. So you'll see after several minutes the texture is changing. This is a kind of a sticky dough, so don't worry about it, but you'll see that it's kind of on the very bottom still sticking. And this is kind of what it looks like when it's getting a lot closer to being done, and I'm about to pull it off. But you can see it's much smoother. It's elastic. This is time to go ahead. We can just go ahead and remove the dough hook and then let it rise for about an hour. So give it a cover with a kitchen towel. You can leave it right there in that same bowl. I just kind of like to pick it up and touch it. I like the texture of dough. It's fun. Just kind of showing you it as well. I'm just going to cover it and let it sit for an hour. In the meantime, I just went ahead and melted my butter that we're going to use at the very end after they get pulled out of the oven. And I put garlic salt in there. You can use garlic powder and salt for your mix, or if you have garlic salt, you can go ahead and just put that in there as well. Mix that, just give it a good mix. Now we're going to go ahead and cover our cookie sheet with our parchment paper, because it's messy because we end up putting a lot of butter on there at the end. If you don't have parchment paper, just go ahead and spray it with some kind of cooking spray. I'll also show you guys how to make your own cooking spray that's much more frugal, which means cheaper and super easy. And you get to store it in a cool glass container if that's what you have. So I'm going to go ahead and get the dough out of the bowl that just kind of hung out and proofed for about an hour. We need to shape it. I'm going to shape it into a size of a rectangle. They say it's about 10 inches by 5 inches, but you don't have to measure it. Just go ahead and shape it into like the kind of like the size of the logs that you want for the breadsticks. And we're just going to use our bench scraper. If you don't have a bench scraper, you can use a knife. Knives kind of like tear at the gluten or the gluten structure of the bread. So those bench scrapers are really nice to be able to use to cut things and make it smooth and easy going. So we're going to cut them into about 10 to 12 pieces. Kind of depends on what size of rectangle that you cut them out in. And they don't have to be pretty. I mean, you can see some of them look like mine actually has little snail tentacles or something on it, but I'm not too worried about it. They're going to proof up just fine. So we're going to go ahead and lay them out all onto the parchment paper. You might have to move some around once you get them all on there, as you could tell that I needed to do that. And then we are going to let these rise for about an hour. They're going to double in size. Or you could just set your timer for an hour and then bake them after an hour. It should be fine. If the yeast was proofed, they already did their first rise, they're going to do their second rise just fine. So we're going to go ahead and just let them sit out. And there they are. They have proofed. They have doubled in size. You can see up close the texture. They have, plumped up. So this is great. So you're going to preheat your oven to 400 degrees. Once it's preheated, then go ahead and bake them till about golden. It takes about 10 minutes. Look out, that's perfect. You don't want to go too much with these because you want them to be that light and fluffiness. And you can see my butter over the time that the bread was proofing kind of hardened back up, but that's okay because the breadsticks are hot, so be careful when you're pulling them out of the oven. And then go ahead and just slather those bad boys all with that garlic butter mixture, which is going to be delicious. You can also flip them over as well and do the other side. Just depends on how much you have or how much you're putting on top. These are going to want to be served warm. So for your nights that you're making these for your spaghetti dinner or something, make them during the day or a few hours ahead of time, since you have to have a couple hours of that proof time. But isn't that delicious looking? I bet you are drooling on your keyboard right now. I'm kidding, but maybe you are. I don't know. You tell me. So let's take a look at what they look like inside, how light and fluffy they are. And then go ahead and enjoy.